Please continue to spread your gifts for all beings, bless small humans, and protect this land. I am Antiphone, I accept God's punishment. Then, did Mr. Lee hear it? Then the scene switched to the side of the longevity club. There was a man running and crying. Come find Mr. Lee, he said that, the boss will definitely punish you, it's too much, bullying people. I have to tell the boss not to forgive him. Then the young man rushed into Mr. Lee's room and jumped on Mr. Lee's body. Probably so, he said. Sir, oh there are people bullying me. That name by how there he has a big mouth, but it says I have a quantum computer. Adults like again have young faces people Mongteno there alternately come to my place every day. They even eat my food and ask me to go out and buy stir-fried noodles for them. They told me to go shopping for them like hamburgers and fries. And there's a lab computer set in my soul sir why can they kick me out doing errands for them? Sir oh you have to help me get justice, my fries my sandwich. Then, Mr. Lee also spoke about heaven and earth. Alright, then lead me to see it. While Robert was snitching to Mr. Lee, there was only one person left in the control room sitting on Robert's chair with a cup of coffee on the table. Meanwhile, Mr. Lee and Robert had also appeared. Mr. Lee looked at the peaceful scene here, with many questions. At that time, he heard Robert say, Robert just called for strong allies but didn't see his enemy anywhere. Why is that? What about the others? There were many people just now. Then, the person sitting on Robert's chair also replied that they had gone out to buy fried noodles. They said that the snacks here were too bad to eat. Robert also saw someone had taken his favorite chair. He shouted, stand up right now, that's my throne, you know? Mr. Lee saw Mr. Tesla and asked, Tesla, what are you doing here? Hearing Mr. Lee say that, Tesla also smiled and said, just going online. Who says the equipment here is high-end? Yes, sir. I found something interesting. Then Mr. Lee also came to see and Tesla said, there was a small earthquake in the province's valley yesterday. After calculating and simulating the path of the seismic wave, I found that in the transition zone 660 kilometers under the Earth's surface, where these shadows overlap. That means these places are not as smooth as one might imagine, but they are very rugged, like mountains on the Earth's surface. So do you understand what I mean? Mr. Lee shook his head and said no. Robert angrily said in English, according to Article 13, it is banned in my lab. Then Tesla said that children these days always focus on the back of the moon. But has anyone known that the real secret lies beneath our feet? There may be a completely unknown underworld hidden under the Earth's crust. According to all domestic and foreign earthquake data in recent years, plus everyone's deduction in this area, the ups and downs in some places even exceed the height of Mount Everest. That means the roughness of different substances inside the Earth is different. If this is proven to be true without any doubt anymore, this exploration of the world under the Earth can be compared to Columbus discovering America. Then there was a voice from Professor Du talking to Tesla. According to many physical theories, geological research results and depth exploration results all tend to think that the Earth's core is liquid on the outside and solid on the inside. Moreover, the temperature of the Earth's core is up to several thousand degrees, so according to current scientific theories, it is hard to believe that there is life there, let alone an underworld. Tesla was surprised to hear Ms. Du say that too. Tesla was a bit embarrassed, but then he happily exclaimed that great question. Great question, little Du. Everyone says little do. You are an empty vase. Lao Tzu did not expect her to have such deep understanding ability. Oh girl. I like you already. Little Du was very angry as if she wanted to slap Tesla a few times. Anyway, she has lived for nearly 40 years now, but is still being called Little Du by an old man with a baby face and teased by him too. The people here also reacted differently, some laughed while others felt embarrassed. It's not me who said it. It's not me, this guy talks too much. Does anyone agree with that? Oh, they probably don't agree with Tesla taking the parking spot. Then Tesla turned on the projector and returned to the main topic about Miss Xiao's suspicions. In fact, many people in history have claimed to have witnessed or fallen into the underworld on the earth. But because of inconsistent discussions and different discussions, there is no scientific evidence to prove that it is authentic, and it is always considered a legend. However, according to ancient legends and discovery reports, the legend of seeing two leaves in Tibet and empty corridors under thousands of miles of dikes, 6 new lands in America, all point to a theory of a hollow earth. However, this claim has not been recognized by the mainstream scientific community, just like the electricity we use now is called a murderer. Hearing Tesla say that, Miss Xiao didn't know what to say. Then Mr. Li said to Professor Xiao, "She has always been strict like those with big brains like Tesla. It's almost like a madman, isn't it?" Hearing Mr. Li say that, Professor Xiao was flustered and panicked. She turned to Mr. Li and said, "I didn't mean that, I didn't mean that." Seeing Professor Xiao react like that was quite cute, so Mr. Li quickly changed his expression, winked at Miss Xiao with a smile, and said, "To tell you the truth, I also feel that way. That guy is really a madman who has lost his mind." But Tesla also heard it. Not only was he not angry, but he was very happy, clapped his hands and said, "Thank you for your compliment, sir. It's been a long time since anyone has said that to me." Professor Xiao found it hard to understand. Then Professor Xiao said to Mr. Li, "Right, sir, all our manpower and resources are currently focused on the universe, the second world. Allocating part of our strength and resources in an exploration without specific evidence, isn't it inappropriate, sir?" Hearing Miss Xiao say this, Mr. Li also started thinking about this issue, but then Mr. Li also seriously said that there is no need to worry about this. The club is confident that it can provide resources for multi-line projects. Hearing Mr. Li say this, Professor Xiao said, "Although that is true," but then Mr. Li also shouted out loud, "So how sure are you guys?" So because Mr. Li asked Tesla to raise his hand, meaning 90%, sir, then Old Amber also said, "We have calculated a lot, we are getting closer to the final answer, although it's hard to believe, but it's true." Old Mend also added, "Yes, the remaining 10% needs field investigation to find out the reasons, so let's go to prove that this 90% possibility is correct." Hearing this, Mr. Li also said, "Very good," and very spirited. Then, Mr. Li suddenly stood up from his chair. "Okay, I declare the establishment of the Underground World Development Committee. Moreover, exploring and exploiting the Earth's core has been upgraded to a top priority task and placed on par with the highest task from today. Mend, Tesla, Amber, you three will be the executive heads of the Underground World Development Committee. But according to me, seeing Tesla already has a lot on his plate, so," hearing Mr. Li say this, Tesla screamed, causing his fake beard to fall off, "Only children have the right to choose. I, Nikola Tesla, want everything." Hearing this, Mr. Li was helpless. "All right, if you've said so, it would be unreasonable not to exploit you. So now, I will consider it as a guarantee note you have set up." Mr. Li's discussion ended. After taking over the task for Tesla about exploring the underground, Mr. Li stayed in the room, watching the diary. Mr. Li said that the Longevity Club is still developing, step by step. Some have been completed, some are being deployed. In addition, there are countless projects based on the platform of macro shaping. There may be mistakes and errors, but I don't really care about these details. Why? I have a capable and excellent subordinate team here, so why worry? Anyway, I still have a lot of time here. Even if there are mistakes, they will eventually be corrected. Mr. Li left the book on the table and sighed. Then, Professor Zhao's assistant, Du Man, came and said, "Sir, the packaging and testing process of Universe 2 is in its final stages. We need to spend a month together to participate in the time-speed test, while Tesla wants to send some other members of the Phaon team to participate in exploring and mapping the underground world." Last week, Mr. Li heard Professor Xiao say that, also stroked his beard and chin, and said, the past 2 weeks have been really tiring. Professor Xiao, shall we review the key points? Hearing Mr. Li say that, Miss Xiao was also silent for a while. Then the girl said, understanding Mr. Li, the editor said that he still has a lot of documents that have not been signed drawings. So please don't waste time on useless networks, sir. Hearing Professor Xiao say this, Mr. Li was also speechless. Then Mr. Li closed his eyes and said, then let's get to work. Our talents in foreign companies, international and domestic companies add up to tens of thousands of people. There is also a human resources department that needs to be controlled, and I will hand this over to you. The girl finished speaking. Mr. Li also did not answer, so rudely confused. Then Mr. Li wanted to ask Professor Xiao, but she also had something to ask Mr. Li. Sir, I have something to ask you. Now the club has more and more new projects and more people, not only peripheral employees but also talented seniors from the past and history. Now you want me to be head of human resources, so I'm afraid I can't do this job myself. I used to call myself a genius who can grasp the general direction, but now I feel that previous knowledge is hindering my imagination. Professor Xiao continued, I have always been diligent and a good student since I was young. I rarely show myself idle, I always read books and novels. Right, yes, about talents, we have high-level elites like you, we also have old people who regret the past, we also have hard-working people climbing up from the bottom. If you want to quickly get acquainted with all kinds of people, besides communicating directly with them and living with them, then the second thing is to read more books, read many biographies of people who have existed, whether it's A. Yang Chun, by C. or people from Weibo. In the end, we still need to use text and video to record, books are really good things. Sir, I want to take a leave of absence for a while, a few days, a few weeks or so. I want to use this rest time to supplement my knowledge. Hearing Professor Xiao say this, Mr. Li quickly turned around and said, leave? Of course, I don't accept or approve. You can't leave me. What I mean is that you can't be absent at this important time. Okay, so I've prepared this for you. This is what the Eagle team has built and manufactured with the ability to accelerate time, under my guidance. Here is the library. Miss Xiao was very surprised. It seems that Mr. Li is afraid that his assistant, Professor Xiao, knows less than the old Tesla who has lived for many years. So he decided to train her like Bang Hao, to read books for a few months, a few years, but only take one day. Then does the secretary feel sad? Then Du Duiman said to Mr. Li, Sir, even if I'm here to read books, I'm afraid it will take me a lot of time to read them. Actually, do I have a decent request from you, sir? What request? Can I be trained like the Eagle team? Why do you say that? We, have to think about going together. Then Mr. Li again hacked time accelerated 100,000 times. Mr. Li started accelerating for Miss Xiao. Around the girl were all glowing yellow light spots. Mr. Li said that when time is approaching a certain level, she will participate in another kind of scale in reality. She, at this point, has started learning for a long time now. Time acceleration is really the best thing to hack something. In the room, all colors are distorted because time is manipulated by Mr. Li. Every minute passing in reality is very long at accelerated time. Then Mr. Li also stepped out of the room and closed the door for Miss Xiao to study on her own. See you tomorrow. Then Miss Xiao finished speaking, then also turned around and left. Perhaps it will only take 3 hours in T country. It's been 2 months since the apocalypse flood was created in Mini-World 1. The people in this mini-world are more odd, so just in the past 2 months, they have quickly brought their civilization back to prosperity with a terrifying reproduction rate. And Mr. Li is on a plane going somewhere. The plane landed at some airport in T country, and the group of people that Mr. Li had trained were Mr. Li's guards, including Bang Jiao, Quan Bang Hao, and Truong Hu, also escorted Mr. Li, looking up at the blue sky with a serious face. It turns out Mr. Lee is checking his own lifespan information. His name is Mr. Lee, age 29, remaining lifespan 12,800,000 years. Seeing his lifespan like this, Mr. Lee also smiled and said, "Now Mr. Lee finally has enough capital to open up a completely new universe." And Bang Hao said to Mr. Lee, "Sir, everything is ready. Yes, then let's go. Prepare for Universe 2, T Branch, Mini World 2 Development Test Site." Here it also has voices ringing out: Mini Universe 2 Quality Check Stable, Intervention Pressure Stable, Self-Check Process has been completed, and Self-Run Process begins. Then, Nikola Tesla looked at Mr. Lee in fascination and asked, "What do you think, sir? Can you see it?" Mr. Lee was a bit surprised. He said, "You've really done it." "How?" Mr. Lee saw a model that resembled the universe before his eyes. It was magnificent. It was no wonder that Nikola Tesla could achieve this in just a few months. "What did you say, sir?" "Since we have the first world as basic data to learn from, the second universe is just a careful calculation of stacked matter. Although the area of this simulated space is only hundreds of square meters, the radiation of this planet still exists. The sparrow may be small, but it has all the necessary components. Now, sir, please start giving it your time and life." Mr. Lee took out a time watch and said, "All right then. I've been waiting for this moment anyway. But sir, please be careful. This world is smaller than before, and the moon is as big as an apple. If there's a slight carelessness that changes the moon's gravitational field, then the shrunken Earth will." "Okay. I understand, I've seen that movie too." Then, Old Man Me-Ettles told his employees to prepare for Universe 2 and start doubling the time. "All emergency procedures are on standby for me, understood?" "Yes, sir." Then Deep Kia took another employee's seat and said, "You go somewhere else. Let me sit here and touch things leisurely. You must know that our actions must be completely synchronized with the boss, sir. The revolution to push the planet begins to prepare for memoirs. Come see my little treasure, let me see how arrogant you are." Then, a planet like Earth appeared, probably Universe 2, and it seemed to vibrate slightly. Some female employees exclaimed that they were simulating the hydrosynthesis reaction of the planet, with temperatures rising to 4,000 degrees Celsius and hydrogen content being 75%, and oxygen content being 26%. Now it was Mr. Lee's turn to perform. A bright circle appeared on Mr. Lee's finger, then Mr. Lee smiled and said, "Time acceleration, speed up time by 100 million times." So, Mr. Lee invested his time into Universe 2. There was a phenomenon of lightning shining as bright as the sun. Then, Mr. Lee retracted his hand and released streams of time energy. There were also yellow lightning effects around him. Mr. Lee smiled like a gangster. Universe 2 shone brightly. A time watch appeared and yellow light spots flew out from it. Then, a voice came out saying it would become a new universe and could ask for life in this small planet world. The employees there were all admiring the light shining throughout the room. Two young men were talking in astonishment, saying it was their first time seeing this. Then, Old Man Mendeleev saw that his employees were too engrossed in watching the movie, so he told them to quickly check the timeline for him, or else he would kill them if they missed supplying chemical element crystals. "Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Then, Old Man Mendeleev looked at the new world with emotion but still tried to hold back his tears, saying, "These planets are definitely the most beautiful scenery I have ever seen in my life. God created such magnificent worlds. His tears will quickly fall down. He can't let others see him crying." Then, it was Tesla's turn to witness a new world being born and life appearing. He whispered, "This cradle of planetary birth is God's great creation." He was not like Old Man Mendeleev and had tears in his eyes. They must have thought about how their world was also created like this. "Mr. Lee, you are doing what God has done for us. Then, there were voices of the control and observation staff saying, it's too fast, it's really too fast, sir. Amber said that the living environment had exceeded the initial value. Sir, hurry up, hurry up. Quickly release the acid creature, laser water, and protein. Right now. In the storage compartment, there were glowing blue crystals moving. One by one, Amber, Tesla Mendeleev, and others were all nervous, sweaty, worried, and scared. If they were careless, it would be over. Amber asked if they had caught up yet. Tesla said, God bless. Mendlip looked at Amber typing on the keyboard and said, don't let me look down on you, old Amber. The others were constantly worried and even trembling with fear. Mr. Lee was still holding his position firmly, providing time with old Amber, combined with not allowing a single second of error. Then, Mr. Lee's expression changed as if he had become a villain. He whispered, I have felt the birth of life in this new world. The position of the first miniaturized world in my eyes is my granary of time, which provides me with 600,000 years of life every day. This is a population whose future will be completely controlled. They strictly reproduce and repeat the prosperity and destruction of Earth's civilization in their history. Now, they live an ordinary life under the leadership of customers, but in this new world, Universe 2, it's different. Life has appeared like dinosaurs. Apart from the rules set by scientists, life here in this new world is no longer subject to any intervention or control. They will probably turn this world into a natural simulation like Earth because it has a moon orbiting around it. Here, there are two species of dinosaurs, one flies and one is on land. It suddenly appeared behind the flying dinosaurs and suddenly bit the wing of one of them. It felt pain, so it started to get angry. Its eyes glowed with signs of electric elements appearing, and it shot a yellow lightning bolt at the one on the ground. Its roar echoed throughout the area. Could it be that Mr. Lee provided fuel as time which gave them superpowers? After their fight ended, they both left. Mr. Lee said that life here will truly begin to regenerate as well as evolve. The dinosaur ran while panting heavily, its eyes also emitted electric sparks. He continued to run somewhere in the forest and looked up at the sky. He must have heard something and was startled. He saw the spaceship, the observation satellite of the control room, the first species to witness aliens. The observation was in the first world, where a lucky monkey was picking fruits. Then, it was caught. In the second world, it was a dinosaur, but sometimes those who created them would charge a small fee from here. Perhaps he wanted to turn the dinosaur into a life-collecting employee. So, for research purposes, that satellite launched a super stretch arm of the device. Perhaps it was kidnapping dinosaurs again. The sample extraction process has been completed. Sir, come and see for yourself. This is the ruler of the 4th century in Universe 2. It is very similar to the dinosaurs of the Cretaceous period on Earth. Oh really? But where did it go? Don't forget, their moon is only as big as an apple. Even this proportionate dinosaur is only as big as a firefly. We have conducted some data collection before. On the contrary, these little ones are evolving faster. We can imagine that, according to our physical rules, these creatures may have some atomic properties, like the lightning fight earlier. At the same time, uncertainty also exists for what you hold in your hand. It seems to have similar electric properties after being shocked by that flying lizard in an electric shock. It really glows like a firefly, but in Universe 2, this firefly is like Godzilla. Interesting. These creatures are so strong, can they ensure that humans will eventually win? I don't expect a group of super dinosaurs to rule this new world. But turn back time with me, listen to what Mr. Lee says. Tesla paused, then spoke. In fact, it is impossible to create a dinosaur man by hard work. Perhaps that is a new direction. Hearing Tesla say that, Mr. Lee was speechless. He will destroy this Earth again. Tesla, if dinosaurs have superpowers, Can humans survive? Hearing Mr. Lee say that, Tesla laughed and said, I'm not joking. According to current ecological inference results, in an ecological environment similar to Earth, up to 90% dinosaur populations have indeed taken the upper hand. But in terms of using Homo sapiens elements, they are the group that can achieve the best results, which is really ironic. Clearly, it has evolved into a super creature, but it still can't be the protagonist because human appearance is not accidental. So, I'm really curious about the final result of evolution. Sir, please give it to me first. First of all, I will perform a series of genetic analyses on it. Be careful. What you are holding is that dinosaur. Hearing that, Mr. Lee probably didn't want dinosaurs to be the main characters in this new world anymore. It also has superpowers, appearing as electric elements. Mr. Lee accidentally dropped the DNA container, or it was really a dinosaur. Then there was a system voice issuing a warning, Sample 12 has died. Sample 12 has died. Tesla screamed like he saw a ghost, my important experiment, my beloved dinosaur baby. Mr. Lee bore an innocent face, then Tesla confided a lot with Mr. Lee, clearly, I felt like I had caught it already, so why didn't I? Immediately after that, Mr. Lee used his smile as an answer, Tesla, or should we catch another one? What do you think? Tesla then started to get serious again with his cold voice, no, sir. In fact, right now, as we are talking, Homo sapiens have evolved, they have really evolved. I told you to be careful, but you still let it die. For the first time, I was reprimanded by an employee. The intelligent and talented people, who were proficient in elemental magic, quickly rose to lead the society of their tribe, leading the tribe to become stronger and distinguish into different tribes. For example, does your village have people who can use magic? Ours does. The basic melody of Mini World number 2 was born. Does anyone recognize it? In Asia, a slave dynasty established by the yellow race quickly rose. On the other side, the war between the white city-states gradually subsided, and a new civilization emerged. Mr. Lee saw that Mini World number 2 was developing well and smiled happily. It progressed very well, allowing a world to go through hundreds of years in just a few months. I still prefer humans over those dinosaurs. Humans are magical, Mr. Lee stroked his chin and added, I wonder what new things will be developed in the future that do not exist on Earth. I'm really looking forward to it. Then, Tesla ran to Mr. Lee with a notebook. Mr. Lee, please look at this. Mr. Lee crossed his arms and looked at Tesla, who said, after our calculations, the current social civilization is on par with the slave society on Earth. The acceleration of time may be delayed a bit longer. Mr. Lee also said that it's not a problem. Then, Mr. Lee turned to look at the control screen again and said, before that, could he dig up some specimens and take them away? That is, he would go to a land sample in this world for research. Tesla didn't understand what Mr. Lee meant. Perhaps this is mini-universe number 2. The old buildings were ruined and looked like a deserted place. Somewhere in the forest, there was a man who had just returned from hunting and harvested his spoils. In the sky, there was sunlight shining on the ground, perhaps artificial sunlight. It seemed to be blocked by something round. The man was so scared that he even dropped the beast he was carrying on his back, raised his head to look up with wide eyes. Oh, his mouth! Then something big hit the ground in front of him, causing a big explosion. That was Mr. Lee's alien flying saucer digging up soil. The 3 excavator buckets were like hands catching something, and this is a soil sample? It looked like an island being dug up. Could mountains or large structures be created like this by stacking them on flat ground? Don't tell me that the hunter is also in that soil sample. Outside, Mr. Lee smiled. I wonder what Mr. Lee will do with that soil sample. This is what you want to know, right? By the way, let's save some specimens. I want to observe them. Then there was an announcement from the system: the sample has been successfully collected, the ecosystem has begun. Then Mr. Lee said, when the last planet also embarked on the path where magic and technology coexist, what will happen to those who are cut off here and have a common origin? Then Mr. Lee looked at something box-like on the table. Could it be that he intended to create a model of life like raising fish? Old Mendeleb said that climate and temperature have been adjusted. It is completely suitable for mini-universe number 2. We will record data and debug equipment anytime here. Then Mr. Lee looked at that realistic mini-land piece and said, thank you for your hard work. Then Mr. Lee touched the glass frame with his face and limited vision. If people here were trapped, they would see Mr. Lee as a monster. Then, Mr. Lee hacked the time for that aquarium box, accelerating time by 10,000 times. The light shone powerfully inside the land piece. Many clocks appeared, and everything inside seemed to be watching a fast-forwarded video. Old Mendeleb was also surprised. He looked at Mr. Lee and whispered, such a shocking scene, yet he was so calm and comfortable, so refreshing. A person who can treat a part of the world as a pet fish, took a piece of land from the mini-world and brought it back to make a mini-garden in the box to watch. Perhaps this old man, Mr. Lee, is the only one who can do it. As the saying goes, a day in heaven is equal to a year on earth, and for this mini-world, it is a day in the real world, equivalent to 27 years in the mini-world. Therefore, we can observe them developing rapidly while Mr. Lee is having this rare vacation, sitting on a chair reading books, relaxing comfortably without needing to dress neatly. There is also a piece of the mini-world there, in a glass box, kept like an aquarium. Decades have passed. The level of civilization is a method used to measure the advanced technology level of a civilization based on the number of extraterrestrial planets that a civilization can use for communication. That means a planet will use a lot of energy to communicate with the outside world, only then it can be counted into the level, even if our Earth has not yet reached level 1. Can the mini-world do it? Earth, it is still at its current level, still 0, by this way, we and they seem to have no difference. Mr. Lee was looking at his hand and thinking when there was a noise outside the door. Come in, the door is not locked. So the person opened the door and came in. It was old Vin Jia. He saw Mr. Lee start laughing and said, hello, Mr. Lee. So he was very surprised and said, long time no see, Vin old man, then muttered, it's over, my beloved vacation. Then Mr. Lee saw another person coming in. Then Mr. Lee stood up and went to those two men and said, isn't this the head of the Tsong family? He also said, sir, you don't need to stand up. You can just sit there and talk to us. We have no problem. Old Vin Jia also smiled. Mr. Lee approached them and said, last time at the party, I added 1 year of life to you. I wonder if your knees are better. Thanks to you, sir, everything has been much better. This time I came here mainly to express my gratitude to you, Mr. Lee. By the way, I want to see if there are any tasks suitable for me. I am ready to dedicate myself to your club. Indeed, the club was gearing up to make some big moves. Old Song had come at just the right time too. Hearing Mr. Lee say that, Old Song didn't respond. Then old Vin Jia, worried about offending Mr. Lee, turned to Old Song and whispered, hey man, what is Old Song doing? Answer him. Then he laughed and said, it is an honor for an old man like me. Mr. Lee heard him say that and adjusted his glasses before asking, Old Song, what do you think? It seems like the old man was uncomfortable talking to Mr. Lee. So Mr. Vin's family exclaimed, sir, this old man, he always wants to visit you, but he doesn't know how to communicate with someone as superior as you. So he's afraid he might say something that would upset you, or speak rudely to you. Upon hearing Mr. Vin's family's explanation, Mr. Lee looked at the old man with a smile and said, are you afraid of interacting with strangers? Mr. Vin Jia Din said something else, but then he saw the fish tank and changed the subject. That's Lego, right? Do you also like playing with it? The old man looked at it and said, it's really unique. At first glance, you can see that it must have taken a lot of effort to play with it. A few days ago, I assembled more than 500 pieces to raise turtles. Mr. Lee didn't know what to say when he heard them talking. He probably didn't know that it was a tiny country. Sir, I don't know what you plan to raise here, but I have a top-notch gecko. If you want it, I'll give it to you. I have no intention of raising small animals. Lego is not a toy that old men like you should play with. You are not suitable for such things. Moreover, tens of thousands of tiny people have been raised here. They won't be happy if a monster like a gecko appears. The two men were stunned when they heard Mr. Lee say this. Then, Mr. Lee probably kicked them out of the house because he thought the soil color was Lego. Outside the club, Mr. Vin Gia said, "Didn't I tell you? You can't even talk in front of Mr. Lee normally." Hearing what Mr. Vin Gia said, he just laughed and said, "I'm worried, just worried. I trust you because you're like a fool. You old bastard, you're useless. You know, Mr. Lee is distant, but he can't stand humble people like you. If you don't catch his eye and get his attention, you'll be in trouble. No attention means no tasks to do and no points to exchange for time." Mr. Vin was right, but it was just me. The reason why the old man was like this was because of a photo of Mr. Lee's deceased relative that he remembered. The old man sighed and whispered, "When I think about the old photos he left for my sister, I can't help but want to ask Mr. Lee directly if it was really him and why he disappeared. And I also want to ask if he still remembers the girl from back then. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, I just wanted to try the gift my father gave me." That was what she said when she took a photo of Mr. Lee, and behind the photo were the words, written on August 25, 1926, "If we don't have fate in this life, then let's keep our heavy bond and marry in the next life without regret. Mr. Lee, she has been waiting for you for hundreds of years now. Do you remember her?" The world of cultivation and the old scenery open up a story where a cultivator was floating in midair while the world inside the fish tank continued to develop and a new civilization flourished strongly. This is universe number 2, which is different from universe number 1, a world full of fantasy colors and illusions, and the person flying there is pioneering in understanding the elements of this world, becoming a god among ordinary people. When the legend was spread, the trend of seeking fortune and stealing the path deeply penetrated people's lives. In this world, there are two guys fighting, comparing their skills, and their voices echo, "Watch out, be careful, it's okay to babble." And one of them was pushed back, his foot slipped on the ground. "Elder brother, you've been a bit lazy lately, haven't you? Your strength is too weak. Is it because you've been sneaking out to drink alcohol behind our master's back? I'll tell you what, oh my god, you talk too much. So I'll show you what courtesy is." Then, the black-haired guy chanted a spell and his hair turned into Goku's. He chanted into the sword in front of his nose, and a large circle of blue magic appeared, with 4 small magic circles at the corners, and many sword auras spinning around the axis. Then, the young man who had been teasing the black-haired guy saw such a performance and started screaming in fear. "Elder brother, are you serious?" Then, he saw hundreds of magic sword tips flying towards him. "This is too powerful. Where did you learn this skill? You're cheating. It's unacceptable. You don't need to play tricks. Surely our master has taught you how to use this cultivation move too, right? You've been a bit lazy lately." The young man was hit by many sword auras, but, because they were fellow disciples, he was lenient. He sat down with his legs shaking and stupid smoke rising around him. The young man said, "Elder brother, you're the best. You've won. I was wrong. Please forgive me." Then there was a voice of a young man sweeping the yard saying, "That's great. That's great. Elder brother. The move you just used, can you teach me too?" The elder brother also turned around and said, "Your name is Izao. Kid, have you finished sweeping the yard yet? It's not done yet. Like my elder brother said, I'm very smart. If you teach me, I will definitely learn it quickly. You look really confident, but to learn this requires a strong spiritual root which will be deeply engraved into your being. The wastewood will be tied into a broom. Alright, don't be lazy and sweep the yard quickly. After he finished speaking, he left. The young man watched him leave, then picked up his broom angrily and said, "Are you guys looking down on me? Just look down on me. One day I will also break through the realm and become an immortal." What a stupid dream. He looked at his elder brother leaving and whispered to himself, "Just wait and see when I cultivate to great success with the power to tear apart the void, let's see what path awaits me." At the Longevity Club, there were two people coming to meet Mr. Lee. Whose legs are those? No wonder they're so white, it turns out it's Mr. Lee's secretary. And she told the man that he is inside, "Please come in." He heard that and also happily smiled and said, "Sorry for bothering you, Secretary Tam." Then he walked into Mr. Lee's office. Does anyone know what he came to find Mr. Lee for? It's about an old photo. He was a bit worried because his sister waited for Mr. Lee for hundreds of years and died alone, as descendants like him had to demand justice for her. As for Mr. Lee, he didn't know anything yet, he was standing near the window looking outside. But after hearing the footsteps, he turned around to look, and then Mr. Lee said, "Master Kong, what brings you here today?" "Mr. Lee, I shouldn't bother you, but I'm sorry to bother you now. I have something on my mind that I've wanted to ask you for a long time." Mr. Lee was a bit worried after hearing this. Then Master Kong Kia took out a photo and said, "Sir, please take a look at this." Then Mr. Lee also took it and looked at it in surprise. The image of him was printed on an old photo, as if the person inside hadn't changed at all, still handsome, still in the same clothes. Should he whisper to himself that this photo is evidence of his carelessness left behind from his first time travel? Why is this photo in his hands? So does that mean that girl is really a member of the Kong family? Master Kong, what do you want to say? Do you know? My cousin has been waiting and hoping to meet the person in this photo again. For this reason, she opposed marriage and refused to meet anyone. Until she passed away, she was still unmarried. She said she never regretted her decision. Until she died, sir, I want to ask you on behalf of my sister, have you ever remembered a woman like that, even just her figure? Mr. Lee was stunned after hearing the grandson of his secret lover from the past ask him that. Sometime later, when Mr. Lee found out that there was a girl who had died alone because of him and was informed by Old Man Kong, he also sat on the chair, looking at the girl's information. Kong Man, a famous female photographer of the Republic of China, a poet and novelist in the early 1920s. Those who understood China gradually realized that in order to consolidate the country, they had to establish schools for women, which facilitated the birth of women's education in the early period of the Republic of China. Mr. Lee looked at the information about that girl with a mix of sadness and pity. Her name was Kong Man. During the time of the Republic of China, when old and new thoughts intertwined, any woman who dared to love and hate openly was considered a family disgrace. Refusing to be used as a tool in marriage, she almost got kicked out of her family. Then, with the support of her cousin, she established a Chinese language school for female students, dedicating her life to women's education. In the end, she passed away in a small apartment in Country M at the age of 86. Mr. Lee looked at the related articles about that girl and sighed. Leaning back on his chair, he said, she had never married in her life. How could it be? A single woman, never married until she died. Mr. Lee paid attention again, looking at the photo that the girl took. Mr. Lee picked it up, and there were words left by her, August 25, 1926. If there is no fate in the previous life, then ending or terminating desires in this life is especially important. It seems like I owe a great favor, don't I? It's a pity that this person has passed away. It seems that I can only look for opportunities to make up for the Kong family. Outside the corridor, there are two beautiful girls, Mr. Lee's assistant and secretary. The book you introduced to me last time was great. So, do you continue to go to the library? Of course. By chance, I'm borrowing from the boss's library. If I find something interesting, I'll let you know. Yes, sister. I'm busy now. When you go out, I'll discuss it with you again. Lately, his boss has been a bit depressed, his face is cold as ice, so I can't go in with you. The girl listened to her quietly and didn't know what to say, probably because of Mr. Lee's current mood. Mr. Lee sat in the room without saying anything. You can see the secretary chatting, but there are too many documents today. Are you sure you want to wait for me? It's okay, but don't say you saw me. I'm afraid he'll yell at me. You said his mood was crazy earlier, right? Then, Mr. Lee suddenly spoke loudly, Tamo-so, come here quickly for me. Mr. Lee's voice startled the girl, she was scared and trembling. Then, Mr. Lee stroked his chin, looked at the girl without saying anything, as if scrutinizing her, making her awkward. I want to ask you a question. I understand, sir. Then I'm just curious. A girl like you prefers to live in modern times or 100 years ago? What a strange question. Of course it's modern times. She answered quickly. In modern times, not only can I learn a lot, but I can also ask for advice from Sister Du Banhao and others. Because as long as I'm sincere, no one will hate me, and I won't worry about nobody caring about me like when traveling back in time with you. Then, Mr. Lee also thought and murmured, although I don't know her personally, it's a pity that a genius was born in the wrong era. Boss, if you have to go on a business trip again then Can I bring something modern? Like a novel. Is it convenient for me? Where is he? Probably Mr. Lee has gone into history again. The girl is Mr. Lee's secretary, so when the boss goes on a business trip, she also has to go. But now Mr. Lee is going to meet girls, so no need. Mr. Lee appeared in the flow of time with a stream of life flowing through him. Even though history cannot be changed, with his limited lifespan, he should help her as best he can. Friendship with this photo is not useless. Then Mr. Lee took out the time watch again, the power of the time law grew again. So this time we will be able to determine exactly where we want to go and who we need to find, right? Mr. Lee used his power to step into a world somewhere. Here is a beautiful day with vast green grass fields and only one tree in the distance, a big tree and a person under the tree. Mr. Lee's photo on the ground is probably an original that she holds. In front of me is a large, luxurious mansion. Mr. Lee has not yet met her, but is in time to see her life, he just happened to see her house. In other words, it's the Kong family's house, and I heard the sound of a cane echoing. The old man was whispering affectionately to Kong Man, look at what you're wearing. You dress like that? You've been studying abroad for a few days, a few months straight, and you've forgotten your mother's family. The old man must be the girl's father. He angrily pointed his finger at his daughter and said, now you follow me quickly. Apologize to young Master Du right away, don't be more and more outrageous. Where the father sits, the child sits. Then the girl also stuttered, I was born to study, do what I want, what I love, not to be a tool for you, trade with others. He heard that and continued to get angry and yelled, what did you say? If you're good, say it again, say it out loud, and make it clear for me to see if I can kill your father or not. The girl heard that and also turned her head back to look at him and said loudly, I said I didn't grow up and try hard to study, read so many books just to be a pawn, bargain for you to find a marriage partner for me, nor to be a tool for you to please others. Do you understand? He heard the girl speak loudly and clearly like that, he was also ignored and broke out in a cold sweat. Then he blinked his eyes, clenched his fist and said loudly, damn it. You are our Kong family's lineage, a prestigious family. How can you become a madwoman who screams and argues with elders like that? Whose rice did you eat to grow up? The girl just kept silent, closed her eyes slightly, bowed her head and listened to the old man continue to scold. He continued to say, "Is all the etiquette and education you learned from childhood have fallen into the dog's stomach? Is your brain waterlogged now?" Then the girl's mother also spoke up, saying, all right. You two please calm down first. Everyone in front of the screen is watching. Sit down and talk slowly." Mr. Lee watched their gentle conversation through the golden time ball. The old man continued to say, "What about young Master Du? He is handsome but a little ugly. He has money and status, he lacks nothing. You refuse him? So I ask you to look at yourself, do you think you really deserve him? And refuse him?" The foolish girl without brains, and Mr. Lee witnessed and heard everything. Mr. Lee smiled and said, "I didn't expect that at all. In my impression, she is a shy girl with some femininity. I didn't expect her to have such a side. This really makes me more interested." Then the small movie ball suddenly appeared with many small rays of light. Mr. Lee touched the golden ball with his hand. Immediately, Mr. Lee was surrounded by light, preparing for teleportation. Mr. Lee shone brightly until he could no longer see his clothes or body. Mr. Lee closed his eyes, preparing for teleportation. Opening his eyes, there was some dynasty somewhere in a road town somewhere. Mr. Lee had successfully teleported his feet to the ground. Mr. Lee closed his eyes and breathed in the dust here, then sighed, "Well, I'm here again." Then, Mr. Lee continued to walk down the street, where many people were passing by. He put his hand in his pocket and murmured, "Even though it's a thing of the past, it still fills me with familiar feelings everywhere." As Mr. Lee was blending in and enjoying the crowd, at that moment, Mr. Lee saw something. It was the silhouette of a girl who looked familiar. She was facing away from him, which surprised him. Even though he couldn't see her face in the bustling crowd, Mr. Lee recognized her. There couldn't be such a coincidence, could there? The girl must have run out here to look for something after being scolded. She looked around sadly, searching for a familiar face among the passing crowd. She murmured to herself, "I didn't meet him again today. Where is he? Why can't I see him? I give up. I can't find someone like him in this magical city. He must have left here. Could he have gone abroad?" Immediately after that, the girl's expression changed from sadness to anger. She said, "Where did this damn guy come from? Why can't I find him? Since that time, he made me search everywhere and then disappeared. He's a good guy indeed. If you're good, if you're capable, you'd better not let me find you, or I'll eat you up." Then there was a chuckle from Mr. Lee because the girl had scolded him. The girl also turned towards the direction she heard the sound from and wondered, "Who is it?" Mr. Lee leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, looking at the girl and said, "Do you know that speaking ill of others behind their back is something women shouldn't do?" The girl at this moment couldn't believe it. She stood still in front of him, covered her mouth in embarrassment, and then said. Then no one spoke. The two of them looked at each other. The girl blushed and felt embarrassed but still tried to look carefully. Mr. Lee just smirked silently without saying anything. Then, there was a scream from that girl, echoing down the street. She must have been very excited. After that, they both talked and went to the bridge, talking and enjoying the view. "Ah, that thing. So, who are you exactly? Where do you live? Where did you come from? Why do I always feel like you're not from this world?" she asked. So, he took a moment before saying, "Let me formally introduce myself to you. Actually, I am Mr. Lee." Then, he snapped his fingers. Immediately, everything around him slowed down a lot, as if it had stopped. The girl was also affected, but then she was free again. Mr. Lee saw a monster. He was floating in midair, with a dazzling light shining on his face, as if someone was shining a flashlight on it, and a clock symbol spinning around. The girl saw this and was stunned, her eyes wide open. Despite being blinded by the light, Mr. Lee still tried to introduce himself to the girl. I am a businessman, a time merchant from another space and time. My name is Mr. Lee. Do you remember? I came here because I heard that you were waiting for me, right? So, you really know magic spells for transformation and flying around, don't you? She inquired. It's not magic or spells at all, he corrected. What I can do is manipulate time. I can travel through time and space, control time, and control the human lifespan. The girl listened to Mr. Lee's words but couldn't say anything. She just looked at him, then pouted her lips and blushed. So, you control time and space, even human life, right? I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. You're lying. You're just a good magician, right? Don't deceive me, she asserted. Hearing this, Mr. Lee paused but then smiled, asking, a magician? Are you sure you think I'm lying? She didn't respond but lowered her head, imagining something that made her sweat coldly. Was she thinking Mr. Lee was a ghost? Then, gathering her thoughts, she said, if you can control time, then you can see the future and the past, right? Also, you can see my future, right? Mr. Lee pondered her question before asking, is this what you've always wanted? Do you really want to know your own future? Surprised, she looked at Mr. Lee, perhaps thinking of taking advantage of his abilities. He scrutinized her closely, his expression turning somber as he recollected that the girl was actually deceased. This was a young version of her, from a time when she was about to run away from home. She didn't catch Mr. Lee's response, but seeing his face made her uneasy. Worriedly, she asked, is my future ending very bad? Mr. Lee sighed and reassured her, at least you have completed your work and have received praise from the world in the future. The girl heard Mr. Lee say this and felt a little relieved. She lowered her head a bit and smiled. Mr. Lee is hard to understand, so he turned to ask why she was laughing. The girl replied, I'm laughing because it's good enough for me like this, because it means that in the end I really didn't marry that old man named Do. My destiny is not supported by my family, parents, relatives. Every step I take in the future will be extremely difficult and cautious. Hearing the girl say this, Mr. Lee happily said, if you regret it now, things will definitely change in the future. Then, Mr. Lee whispered again, girl, this is not something you can casually tell others. Ignoring Mr. Lee's words, the girl pouted her lips, closed her eyes, raised her head high and declared, I don't want it anymore, do you know? I studied abroad and saw a lot of despair on the way back home. It was super great on the way with me not wanting to be confined at home like my mother in the future either. I like to travel around, like taking pictures and want to record all the beautiful scenes I see. No matter how rugged the future is, I will accept it. You're sorry because maybe that won't be possible in the future, right? What do you mean? Then, Mr. Lee raised his hand high and transformed it into two glowing yellow balls, essentially Mr. Lee's mini TV, and handed it to the girl. On it were images of modern women, including two girls named Teacher Lo Due Man and Tan Ao Su. Seeing this, the girl asked, these women, what do you mean? I feel they are very different. Where are they different? They are my employees. They are not beautiful characters at all. Everyone can do their own things. In the future, there will be women who are good at photography, foreign languages and literature like you. I'm sure that in the future you will be considered a great photographer, Mr. Lee explained. The girl heard Mr. Lee say this and became very excited and happy, exclaiming, what did you say? What did you say? This is really smart, really great. Then, she rushed to Mr. Lee, hugging his arm tightly as she pleaded, I want to go to the future, can you take me there? Mr. Lee was stunned looking at the girl, but pushed her away, saying seriously, it's just that you still need to go through painful challenges there, experience daily life, old age, and poverty. You have to endure until the day I come to find you again. So are you ready to persevere and overcome challenges until that day? Hearing Mr. Lee speak with such determination, the girl replied calmly and seriously, "Yes, I agree. I understand." "So fast. Why don't you think about it more carefully?" he advised. "After all, the road ahead still continues from here. Manage your progress forward on the rugged road you have chosen, instead of becoming a puppet, a tool in the house, being manipulated by others for life." The girl affirmed, "I want to become an extremely tough and strong person, not to mention thanks to you, but I already know the secrets of the future, right? What we need to do now is try to implement it." Mr. Lee was both surprised and happy at her resolution. He looked at her and whispered, "Fortunately, she is a person with strong willpower, otherwise history would have really changed for the worse. It's really dangerous what we're doing now, changing the present. I just need to go back and everything is ready." Then, Mr. Lee felt a kind of vibration in the flow of time, likely because he had changed history, causing a bit of fluctuation. Mr. Lee noted that this vibration stemmed from the law of time and worriedly wondered if his appearance there had negatively affected the development of history. That's the end of the latest chapter, guys. Thank you for watching and supporting my channel. This serial will temporarily stop here. When there is a new chapter, I will update more. Do you guys like it? Please comment and let me know your opinion about this series.